Dandadan is a show well known for its many references, like Okarun doing the Carlton during the opening, or this shrimp alien guy singing an 80s Japanese energy drink jingle. But there is one reference that is by far the most important to understanding what Dandadan is actually trying to do with its characters. And unless you're Japanese, it probably went right over your head. Welcome to the bar, I'm Austin, and today we're examining the man behind the reference, the movie star behind Momo's obsession, Ken Takakura, and how he relates to the other Ken Takakura. That's your spoiler warning, get out while you still can. Other than being Momo's celebrity crush, Ken Takakura was an absolute icon of Japanese cinema who was well known for playing honorable, stoic Yakuza members that embodied the idealized Japanese man. And Dandadan takes Ken and everything that he stands for, flips it on its head, and uses that to make some of the most interesting romance that I have seen in a long time. So let's take a look at how Ken even fits into Dandadan's bonkers plot as I make you a drink that an old-fashioned man like Ken would surely love. The old-fashioned. Today on Mixing Media. In honor of Ken's immense Japanese fame, I'll be using Japanese whiskey for this old-fashioned, which is my absolute favorite cocktail because just by adding a little bit of water, sugar, and bitters, you can tone down the in-your-face burn of whiskey and get to know its more subtle flavors, which really is a great metaphor for Dandadan because it's very much in your face, but it also has a lot of really subtle Japanese cultural references that are really easy to miss. Or, if you're Western like me, you probably missed the not-so-subtle way that the show started. Dandadan opens with our leading Gyaru Momo, who's in the process of breaking up with her boyfriend that she really only dated because he looked like Ken Takakura. The only problem was he didn't act like Ken Takakura. An honorable man like Ken would never spinning kick his girlfriend, even if she did do it to him first. As Momo is moping her way around the school, she encounters a nerdy little alien lover that she nicknames Okarun, who quickly word vomits his way into a conversation with her where he starts spouting all these conspiracy theories about the US president going to Mars. And I gotta say, I am extremely disappointed that they took Obama, who was in the manga, out and replaced him with just generic president number 500, because this would have been perfect for my video that I did about US presidents cameoing in anime. I'll link that down in the description, or you can check it out here. It's pretty cursed.
Oh damn!
Momo almost immediately regrets starting this conversation with Okarun and starts teasing him about how he believes in aliens, but eventually admits that she actually believes in ghosts, and he immediately makes fun of her for that. So, not to be proven wrong, both of them set out to prove their point. And this leads to Momo going to an alien abduction site and Okarun going to a haunted tunnel, where they're actually both proven right in the worst way possible, as Okarun is possessed by the Turbo Granny, which, believe it or not, was not created by Dandadan, but actually a pre-existing Japanese folktale. And Momo gets kidnapped by an alien race that are based on the Dada from Ultraman, though all I see is Ablina from Ah Real Monsters. Anybody else watch Ah Real Monsters? That was a fantastic era of Nickelodeon cartoons. So the other thing to know about these aliens is that they are out to steal
Your banana.
Bananas. And it's kind of weird and it doesn't go too well for them, but we'll get back to that because this kicks off a series of events that basically does not stop to let you breathe for the remainder of the show. It is a fast-paced, beautifully animated roller coaster ride. Science Saru really outdid themselves with this one. But to me, all this chaos is really just a backdrop for what Dandadan really is at its core. A romance. And I could be wrong about this. There's only 9 episodes out as of making this, and I've never read the manga, but it seems to me like all the weird, crazy action going on really just serves to move the romance forward. And at the center of all this romance is Ken Takakura. And not just that Ken Takakura, but also Okarun, who reveals to Momo that he shares the same name. But the name isn't the only thing that he shares with Ken. He also acts a lot like Ken, and even says one of Ken's most famous phrases, which translates to, "I'm an awkward guy." So true. So true. This famous quote comes from a series of life insurance commercials that Ken did throughout the 80s, which is exactly the kind of random reference that I live for. But when the two Kens say that they're awkward guys, they don't mean it in the Western sense of like missing social cues or stumbling over your words. There's some Japanese subtext going on here, and also a lot more similarities to be had between our two Kens. But in order to understand those, we need to go back to the 1960s, where real-life Ken Takakura was just starting his journey to stardom, and he was facing an uphill battle. Ken, or as his fans affectionately referred to him, Ken-san, was trying to make a name for himself as a film actor in the early 60s, at a time when the movie industry had already peaked and was down more than 50% as broadcast television was starting to take off. But even despite that, Ken-san was still able to get his big break in 1963 with the movie Life of Hishikaku, whose story of an honorable Yakuza deeply resonated with the Japanese public, and this was because they were going through some pretty serious political unrest at the time. Post-World War II, the United States and Japan signed the US-Japan Security Treaty, which, when it came up for renegotiation in the 1950s, a lot of the Japanese public wanted it just abolished entirely, and via a pretty undemocratic process, this did not happen, and that really served to foster anti-Western sentiment in Japan, as they were frustrated at a very pro-Western establishment. And this is exactly why the romanticized portrayal of the Yakuza that were more similar to samurai than gangsters really resonated so deeply with them. Because the Yakuza and the samurai were often seen as Robin Hood-esque figures that were fighting outside the system for the people. And the movies that Ken-san starred in leaned heavily into this. And when I say movies, I mean he did 180 of these. In the year 1969 alone, he did 13. I don't even know how that's possible. But part of what made it possible was the support of the real-life Yakuza, who are quite fond of the Ninkyo Eiga, or chivalry film subgenre, because it was basically just pro-Yakuza propaganda. They were so fond of these films that they actually helped finance a lot of them so that they could keep pushing out this image of Yakuza as modern-day samurai. But to be more specific about how they wanted to be depicted, they wanted to be shown as stoic, brooding, very centered, never overtly emotional, and this really worked out for Ken-san because these characteristics fit his personality to a T. Everyone that he worked with was always so surprised by just how polite and humble he was, and let me tell you, he would go to some great lengths to avoid overt emotional displays. He would often request that his movies not have any romantic scenes in them, and he even skipped out on his own mother's funeral, which is not as bad as it sounds. He just had his own way of grieving, where he spent an extended period of time with her ashes behind closed doors where nobody could see him, so he could honor her memory. But to go back to that life insurance commercial, this is exactly why he says he's an awkward guy, because he can't openly express his love for his family, so instead he shows it by securing their future through life insurance. And it's the same for Okarun, who can't openly express his attraction to Momo, so he asks her to put more clothes on. Now that's chivalry. But how far will chivalry get you when you don't have the physical power to back up the big, strong protector man image that it puts up? This is the question that Dandadan seeks to answer. And I mean, he pulled Momo, so it seems to be going pretty well for him, only it's not that simple, because my man Okarun has lost his junk. The Turbo Granny took it with her when she possessed him in exchange for some of her power. And how does Okarun use this power? To do the honorable thing that Ken-san himself would have done. Take responsibility for sending Momo off to be probed by aliens and going to save her. So he arrives to save his damsel in distress. Momo realizes that he was the real Ken Takakura all along. They kiss, and everybody lives happily ever after. Only that's not what happens at all. That's just what Dandadan's creator, Yoshinobu Tatsu, wants you to expect, as he paints a picture of traditional values and old school tropes through all his references to Ken-san and everything that he represents. And then he crushes these expectations in the same way that Okarun is mercilessly crushed by the aliens, which then causes Momo's psychic powers to awaken, and she just saves herself and Okarun, and defeats the aliens, and even destroys their ship. All while Turbo Granny has made Okarun smooth as a Ken doll, leaving him emasculated in the most literal sense possible. So with the damsel in distress trope and a lot of what Ken Takakura stands for completely subverted, it begs the question, why? To what end did Tatsu do this? Was it to depict Momo as a girl boss that doesn't need a man to save her? Because I don't think it is. I mean, that is literally what happened, but I think the real point being made here is that these two characters are helping each other grow as people. Okarun forces Momo to look past her superficial, idealized image of Ken-san towards what it really and realistically means to be like Ken Takakura. Meanwhile, Momo pushes Okarun to start standing up for himself and his loved ones, even as he experiences just how painful it can be failing to live up to his namesake. And at the same time, both are teaching each other to be more comfortable with themselves. Momo finally embraces the psychic powers that she had been denying for years, and Okarun feels less shame about what his hobbies say about him. And I don't think either of the characters explicitly understand that this is happening, but it subconsciously draws them together, and that's what makes this just such an interesting romance to me. And I swear to God, if a love triangle with that pink-haired girl ruins this fantastic budding relationship, I will be very angry. Though I'll probably just take a page out of Ken-san's book and keep it to myself. But hey, what do I know? There's only 9 episodes out and I've never even cracked open the manga, so if I'm horribly off base here, you can let me know down in the comments. But with that, I'm Austin. Go check out some of the other fantastic episodes of Mixing Media on screen now, where I analyze anime at the intersection where reality meets fiction. And I will see you here next time on Mixing Media. Bye-bye. It's just water at this point.